MHA podcast. MHA podcast.
MHA podcast.
Hey, I am hosting this show, Quinn.
I'm sorry.
You are taking the words right out of my mouth. Todd's drooling at the mouth. Let me get you a tissue right here.
I'm worried that he's Nick Foles.
I see the word regression plastered all over his stats.
Well, and I cheated a little bit here.
You bastard, how could you? This is a cheat-free zone, a Tom Brady-free zone, and you're funking it up.
If I want to win a fantasy championship, I don't want my quarterback doing that crap.
I have Theo Riddick in front of.
Okay.
What the
Wow. Eddie Lacy's going to be great. How could you, in your right mind, in your sane mind, Eddie Lacy's going to be great?
I don't like doing it, but I'll agree with Todd. I totally disagree with Todd.
Especially with Quain. I hate drafting next to Quain. I'm just gonna have that bottle of tequila right next to me. See, people should be listening to the show just to strategize around us. So glad you're back here with us for another edition of the Mile High Affiliates podcast, where we talk fantasy football. And yes, it's July, but these are the days where research is in full force, or at least it should be. And we're here to help you get ready for that MHA draft in late August. I'm Eric Lansing, your host for today's show. Joining me is Mikey Renaud and Todd Diamond. And, of course, on today's show, as we mentioned, it's going to be the running back position. So many amazing running backs to look over. And we'll kind of tell you who should be drafted number one. And we have a stunner from one of our owners here. So you'll be excited to hear that it's not just Le'Veon Bell, which we'll talk about more in terms of a fantasy poll that we also will give you the results of that coming up. And we'll also talk about, should we be worried about some sophomore slumps? Obviously, those 2017 rookies were quite amazing. And we'll tell you who to keep an eye on in case the slump might be in their future. And we'll talk about those crowded backfields and which guys you need to target so you're not sitting with a backup or a third-string running back on your roster. What's up, guys? Running backs now. Are you guys excited to talk running backs today?
Absolutely. This is the backbone of the league.
Ooh, the backbone. Do you agree with that? Is this the year where it's a backbone, or are we going to go back to wide receivers? It seems like it switches every year.
Every year it changes. It always changes. It's wide receivers, now it's running backs. It'll go back to receivers at some point.
At some point, not this year. 2 years ago was receivers.
Yeah.
Last year, the running backs were at the forefront of the point scoring system. So will it be wide receivers this year? I don't know. You'll just have to wait and see what we say about wide receivers on our next podcast.
And what was I guess, before, obviously it was quarterbacks toward the beginning, up until 2000.
Yeah, a lot of that, though, is that we had two quarterback systems.
Okay.
And so when you have the system that we have, to have two quarterbacks that can get you 50 or 100 points by themselves definitely makes a difference. But
the first 3 years I was in the league, it was quarterbacks. It was obviously maybe one wide receiver, and that was Calvin Johnson, I think, at the time. But it was obviously quarterbacks that were always drafted in the first round.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of people coming into the league, we had a lot of new faces. A lot of CompUSA guys were in those leagues at that point. Then we went over to kind of the college, the kids that I went to school with. So definitely cyclical, and we'll kind of see how this kind of goes in terms of running backs versus wide receivers. But we're going to talk running backs here today. But before we get into some running backs, golly, the NBA is the craziest place that I've ever seen in sports. It's just, it's not surprising that LeBron went to L.A. That's kind of been talked about, and obviously L.A., he's got a home in L.A., but that's the place where Magic and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, so many great players, so he wanted to go there and kind of put his own legacy there. Shaq and Kobe, fine, we'll talk about them too, but it's just in terms of, Golden State, if there was ever, they can't get better, right? They got better. And at a discount price for Mr. Cousins, DeMarcus Cousins, who's now making $5 million, averaging 25 points. I think I saw someone on Twitter saying it's the first time that a team has had 3 players that had 25 more points per game from the previous year. That's nuts, right?
It is.
Isn't this a crazy place?
It's the world that we live in.
Is it a good thing?
It just makes you just appreciate the 90s and 2000s, how good basketball really is. Because this basketball, guys, I don't like it. It's
Golden State's going to win, right?
They'll win, but it's funny, everybody's saying that the league is ruined, nobody's going to watch. It's not true. Everybody's going to watch.
No, I think there's a difference between people watching casually and people that are hardcore watching. Now, you're a hardcore NBA fan. You're a Spurs fan, but you're a hardcore NBA fan. But the casual fan, like someone like me, I'm more casual. Like I follow the Nuggets. I'll watch a game from time to time, but I'm not on it every day. I'm not playing fantasy basketball. And I get into the playoffs because, I mean, there's obviously the best players are in a handful of teams, and they're playing against each other. So that makes that exciting. But if we already know who's going to win, I think that hurts casual fans, I guess, a little more than the hardcore fans. Or
No, it's that allure. So you remember, like, in the early 90s in the NFL when it was always the Cowboys and it was the 49ers.
Right.
You know, you like watching greatness, and then there's always that you want to see if that underdog has a chance to be able to overcome that super team. So, yeah, casual fan will watch.
Is it super team or super duper team? Like, I feel like it's on a whole new level. It's one thing to have 2 or 3 players, but I mean, Golden State has 5.
Yeah.
Isn't that a little nuts?
Yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, it's
I mean, as a Spurs fan, aren't you worried? Like, I mean, I'm sure there's not enough super duper teams where the Spurs are going to struggle. But I mean, it is so top heavy. Like, do we even need a regular season? Should we just go straight to playoffs now?
right. Well, you know, I'm not necessarily worried about Golden State right now as a Spurs fan because we're trying to hold on for dear life to the one superstar we do have.
The one.
One.
And even if you get him,
Is Kawhi even enough? Is Kawhi? I mean, that's 1 versus 5. That's you know.
Hey, don't you badmouth Marcus Aldridge. Okay?
Marcus Aldridge had a pretty good
He's
season.
pretty good. I mean, that's just pretty much.
Let me ask one more question, and we'll talk about fantasy football because I'm sure everybody wants to go into it, though. But isn't parity better for NBA?
No.
No. You prefer to have the super-duper teams?
Yeah, parity's not like parity brings me back to like the middle-ish 2000s. You know, like when the Nets were going to the finals. Was that good for anybody?
I think it's different.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there is that allure of, well, okay, we're going to see the Cowboys versus the Niners in the championship for those mid-90s teams in the NFC Championship. But I don't know. I feel like seeing different teams, seeing different athletes do well is exciting. That as a casual fan, I'm going for the underdog, as you said. Like, I like seeing Jason Kidd and, okay, it's hard to say Kenyon Martin now, but I mean, at that time, it was cool to kind of see them excel. You want to see, you know, the times that Phoenix went, you know, with Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire doing their thing, or I think it just brings, I mean, it's okay to have a couple good teams that are going to be near the top, but what Golden State is doing is on a weird
level, yeah.
video game-ish type of level that is, wait a minute, they shouldn't have that. That's not how that works, right?
No.
But, I mean, like you said, that's the world we live in the NBA. It makes me, as a casual fan, watch less because I already know kind of what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah, sure.
But that's me. That's me. I'm a casual fan. I'm not like
I'm the same way. Yeah.
every day looking at the standings or whatever. I'll follow the Nuggets because they're across the street from where I work. But there you go.
Yeah, no, I like the greatness. You want to see the great teams at the end. That's what this is about. I don't want to see the Nets.
There's only a couple of great teams. Like if it was a little more spread out, then you'd have like maybe 8 to 10 great teams as opposed to 3 or 4.
It's like the NCAA tournament when you see Loyola Chicago in the Final Four.
There is
nobody wants
you
to
cannot.
see that.
All right, let's talk. We can't get into this conversation because if we talk, we'll never get to fantasy, and then we have a lot to talk about with running backs. We're probably going to have to edit some of this down. All right, but before we get into actual running backs, let's talk about some news and notes. And there are some news and notes out there.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
A big one that came down, and maybe it's big. I don't know. We'll talk about it. But obviously, Buccaneers quarterback Jameis Winston suspended 3 games for grabbing an Uber driver's crotch. And this is significant because it was a woman who didn't want to be grabbed in her crotch. But here he goes again. Obviously, the history for this guy off the field is tremendous, and this is being held up. I don't think there is any appeal process for this, as far as I read. So, Jameis Winston, obviously last year didn't have a great year fantasy-wise. Is this someone who you even need to worry about in our league? I mean, was he going to be drafted as a starter? Was he going to be drafted as a backup? Should he not even be drafted at all anymore?
I'm going to take a hands-off approach.
Ooh, very good. Well done, Miguel.
I'm not.
He had that one in his pocket as soon as I mentioned we were going to talk about Jameis Winston. But yes, hands off. Hands off. Hashtag me too. Todd?
I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole.
Or with Jameis Winston's right hand.
There you go. Very
so
good.
should we should even with Jameis, not missing, let's say he was going to play the whole season, were we not worried about drafting him anyway? Were we not high on Jameis Winston?
I wasn't.
I don't think.
Or does it change now? Does it change it?
I don't think you need to. I mean, I wasn't that high on him anyway, but he's somebody that I think he's gonna get picked up off of free agency.
Once it gets closer to him coming back. Because I also know that he'll miss 3 games and there's a bye week in there.
Right.
So I don't even know if they'd even rush him back because it's 3 games and then another game and then their 4th game and then a bye week. And maybe they bring him back for that week 6 game as opposed to the week 4 game, I guess it would be.
Yeah, he's not untouchable as a free agent because what it kind of does, he's a good enough quarterback to where, you know, if you decided that you only wanted to draft one and maybe you're looking down the road at bye weeks and you want to pick him up later on, why not?
Sure. I mean, there's definitely he's got ability if he's not turning over the ball. And he's got weapons. He's just got to be able to utilize them. All right, so there's Jameis Winston. Probably not going to get drafted in our league, but he'll be a guy to keep an eye on as the season goes along. All right, let's keep up with some more suspension talk. Yay! Colts running back Robert Turbin will miss 4 games of this new 2018 season, violating the league's performance-enhancing drug policy. He was in line to split carries with Marlon Mack. I mean, from what I can tell, none of us had Robert Turbin even at least ranked in our top 50. So does this even matter?
No. Next.
I think it does matter.
Well,
I think it does because Marlon Mack was probably going to get, like, in my opinion, was going to get 70%. Now he's going to get 100.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of Marlon Mack's stock is going to go up a little bit because Robert Turbin, obviously he hasn't been super productive, but that is someone taking away carries. Now it's like, here you go, Marlon Mack.
Well, and especially he was taking away the goal line carries, Turbin was.
So there you go. So I think that's really huge. So while none of us were looking to draft Turbin, Marlon Mack goes up because of this. Because if you're in the doghouse to start the season and he's doing well and things are working, especially if Andrew Luck comes back, Robert Turbin may not see the field. But you never know. Running backs, injuries, blah, blah, blah.
and they will probably lean on that running back game a little bit too. Cause
If Andrew Luck's not even there.
Yeah, or
he's
even
going to be there.
Sure he is, Mikey. Yeah, I've heard this story before.
right. Because too, you think they're still gonna ease Andrew Luck into that anyway, so they're gonna depend on that running game a little bit too. So that's something to think about too.
You guys want to talk about more suspensions? A lot of suspensions.
Oh my God.
What's wrong with the NFL here? This only matters defensively. If anybody's interested in the 49ers defense, which might be Alan Cook. But Reuben Foster will be suspended for the first 2 games. So that's just something to think about. And speaking of fantasy defenses, the Legion of Boom is pretty much all but gone, dead. Legion of, what did someone say? It was on my brain. I should have wrote it down. The Legion of whom? Because everybody's gone. So, like, Cam Chancellor's retiring. Obviously, Richard Sherman's gone. Michael Bennett's gone. Earl Thomas may not be there. He's talking about contract stuff. Is Seattle's defense still worth drafting?
Yeah, Cliff Avrill's retired too.
So there you go.
That.
Yeah.
I only have so much notes for as many players as I only got so much space. But
Maybe
yeah,
for a flyer.
But I mean, Seattle's defense was the #1 defense for a lot of years. Probably not going to be the case this year.
No,
Except for those owners who don't pay attention.
Earl Thomas is the last Legion of Boom standing, or a part of that, and
he's not even 100%
yeah.
sure. So.
And I think was it last year or something that I think we were playing the Cowboys and he went up to Coach Garrett and said, "Hey, come get me" or something. So he was like, well, maybe he doesn't want to stay there either. But if anything with Seattle's defense this year, that's more of a streaming defense. I'm not even consider them in drafting them.
Yeah. Mikey, you have anything to say about it?
I'm hoping somebody forgets and just drafts them off previous reputation.
What are the odds of that happening in our league?
50-50.
I agree with you, 100%. Someone will do it. Someone will see it and freak out. And it won't be like the first 2 that go. But as we get closer to the draft, if people are getting tired, people are ready to leave, somebody I'll just take Seattle's defense. It'll happen. Is there any other news or notes? There's not a lot going on these days. It's obviously early July. Not much happening other than people are saying, I like my guy, I like this guy's doing great, blah, 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 blah. But I really didn't see anything else.
Well, on the latter, we talked about this in the previous one, but T.O. where he decided where he's going to give his Hall of Fame speech. Still an idiot and just arrogant for not even showing up, but he's going to do it at his alma mater, Tennessee Chattanooga. and it's free for the public. Wow, what a shocker!
That's not a trip I'd make.
Yeah,
but,
right.
you know.
So he's gonna make a speech there, and it's free to the public. To say, wow,
So he's not going to change his mind.
He's
huh?
not. That's it's still
Todd and Terrell Owens in the same sentence. Not changing their minds in important matters. You're not going to change your mind on Kirk Cousins being the number 1 quarterback, and Terrell Owens not going to. Does that make you feel bad to put you in the same sentence? If you change it to Aaron or anybody, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, I'll give you those guys number 1, and then you won't be kind of lumped in that ridiculousness of Terrell Owens.
Yeah.
But until then,
because this is different compared to Terrell Owens is going into the Hall of Fame.
I don't
Okay,
know if it's that different.
I think.
But
it
anyway,
is.
we do have one. I
Okay.
forgot. We did have one news and notes. It was another suspension that happened yesterday. Aaron Jones is going to miss the first 2 games of the season. Substance abuse, geez, it's just all over the place. People don't know what they're putting in their bodies, or they do, and they're hoping not to get caught. So Aaron Jones, now I think that makes a difference. Now, we're going to talk about it. Maybe we should talk about it later, because we're going to rank the running backs in the crowded backfield. So maybe we'll come to that later. So but that is a news and note that Aaron Jones will miss the first 2 games of the season. Okay, so you guys ready for Todd? Turn off your phone. We're trying to do a podcast. How rude! Now what? Now
Come
what?
on, T.O.
Now unless that's a fantasy football update from ESPN, then I'm not gonna rag you. But what does it say?
It's a must see.
If it's tennis, God help me.
No, it's baseball.
Okay, baseball's fine. Fantasy baseball.
No, tennis happens in the morning.
Okay,
All right.
so you guys ready for some MHA trivia?
Yeah.
Hey, who wants to have some fun? I do. Now, you just saying you want to have fun, or do you really want to have fun?
I really want to have fun. I'm just saying I want to have some fun.
All right, who doesn't like some good trivia here in the afternoon? Now, it's not really trivia, but I'm going to have you guys name me the top 5 running backs in points in our system last year. So, the top 5. You guys can just name.
Okay.
Todd, I'll go back and forth. Todd, give me a guy that was in the top 5.
Kareem Hunt.
Very good. He was ranked 4th. He had 260 points. Mikey, give me someone that was in the top 5.
Todd Gurley.
The number 1 guy. And by a lot, no less. It was 35 points. That's how much Gurley had over the number 2 guy. Todd, give me another guy in the top 5.
Alvin Kamara.
Very good. He was number 3. Go figure that. Number 3 as a backup running back. Incredible. 265 points. Okay, so we have Gurley number 1, Kamara number 3, Kareem Hunt number 4. Mikey, can you name number 2 or number 5?
Le'Veon Bell.
Le'Veon Bell number 2. He was actually, we'll talk about where they were drafted after this. But so 1, 2, 3, 4. Todd, you could win the whole shebang if you can name this running back. If not, Mike has a chance to steal and he'll win it.
Okay.
So who's number 5? Gurley, Bell, Kamara,
Leonard
and Hunt.
Fournette.
That is incorrect. Leonard Fournette was 8th with 205 points. Mikey, who is number 5 in top points among running backs in our scoring system, which is full point PPR? He's got his notes in front of him, too, so hopefully that helps.
I'm going to go with Melvin Gordon.
That is correct. Melvin Gordon, 251 points. And just to round out the top 10, so Gurley, number 1, Bell, 2, Kamara, number 3, Hunt, 4, Gordon, 5, Mark Ingram, number 6, LaShawn McCoy, number 7, Fournette, 8, Carlos Hyde, number 9, and Josh Howard. Josh Howard. What is it? Who's the Howard from Chicago? I can't think of his
Jordan
name.
Howard.
Jordan Howard. Thank you. Josh Howard.
All right, now
Juwan Howard.
before you continue, I just want to note that you mentioned Melvin Gordon, LaShawn McCoy, Carlos Hyde, all in the top 10.
And these all are related because...
Todd?
Do you know why they're all related? Think about Mikey's ego over here.
They were all on his freaking team.
There you go. They were all Mikey's team who didn't win the championship.
Oh,
But
hey,
sticking with the MHA trivia, based on where these guys were drafted. So Gurley, who finished number 1, was drafted in the 2nd round. Le'Veon Bell was drafted 1st round. Kamara, can you guys remember what round Alvin Kamara went?
This 5th.
That is incorrect.
9th.
Incorrect. He was 11th round and ended up finishing 3rd. Kareem Hunt drafted in the 4th round, and Melvin Gordon drafted in the 2nd round. So there you go. And just to kind of go through the rest, Mark Ingram was drafted in the 4th round, McCoy in the 1st round, Fournette in the 3rd round, Carlos Hyde in the 4th round, and Jordan Howard, in the 2nd round. So if you want a good running back, better get them guys early, because it's every once in a while that you're going to get someone out of the 11th round finishing in the top 3. So there you go. Running backs are important. So fun MHA trivia there. We also had a question on our Facebook message board. If you're not on this message board, then get on Facebook, for gosh sakes. Dylan, I'm talking about you. Golly, Dylan, what century we live in. So, Line Rip asked us a question about running backs. Can you give me any running backs that will be helpful late in the season during the playoff push time? So, kind of looking over this question, some of the things I thought about. Now, it's hard to dictate who's going to be good in the later stages of a season. But I think there's factors that we can look at. Obviously, teams playing for something is important. Now, the thing, like obviously Todd Gurley was incredible in the last few weeks of the season, except he didn't play in Week 16.
Ooh.
And so that obviously doesn't help you, especially if you had him in the championship, and then you didn't have him for your championship. But if you have guys that are playing for something and they're important to the team, they'll obviously be utilized a lot more. And how about the second factor, playoff schedule? Now, that, I think, some of us use it, some of us don't. I think playoff schedule, if we're talking about playoff percentage, like the win percentage of teams from the previous year and how they'll do this year, obviously that changes. Players move, schemes change, coaches, all that stuff. It's so different. But if we want to go that route, I think there's a couple teams that kind of stand out in that regard as well. So I was trying to think of, and this is really hard to look up, trying to Google who did well at the later stages of a season by running back. But some of the ones that I remember in my head, and maybe you guys remember some, but like Deion Lewis was a guy that helped folks in kind of towards the end of the season. Burkhead got hurt. Obviously, Gillislee wasn't even in the rotation at that point. Man, Deion Lewis was catching passes, scoring touchdowns, running the ball. He was a guy that did really well down the stretch. Obviously, the guys like Zeke and Le'Veon Bell are going to be good. Both those teams were trying to vie for playoffs, positioning, and they're going to be relied upon heavily. But another guy that I thought was interesting was Kenyon Drake, a guy that obviously with Jay Ajayi there at the beginning of the season, no one really thought about, and then he kind of went kind of bananas, and he had averaged 5 yards per carry in the last 5 games of the season. So I think with that, there are guys out there, but it's hard to kind of dictate like who's going to be great next year down the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys want to say something? I have some notes here, but I've been yapping about this the whole time. But what do you guys? I mean, do you guys think about that type of stuff? Like, who's going to be good? I think like at quarterbacks, we're like, who's got a good playoff? Kind of who's going to be good or who has an easy matchup in the playoffs. But I guess it's harder kind of for running backs.
To be honest, I never really look at that when I'm drafting.
Sure.
I'm more looking at the season as a whole and who's going to be just consistent. That's all I'm looking for when I draft.
And maybe I look at that a little bit, but I do that maybe toward the middle part of the season to see, all right, see what the records are. See if some teams, they have like a great player, like great running back, but they're still teams not losing. I'm thinking, okay, I can ride this player all the way to the into the playoffs, but at the beginning, I don't. I look more toward the middle of the season to see, like I said, what the records are, and then that gives me a barometer to say, okay, I need to go maybe look on that waiver wire to get a running back that's gonna play week 15 and 16.
So, Aaron asked us a question. Let's give him some answers. So I'm going to give him a couple. If we do it based on playoff schedule, now mine, we were going to talk about this before. You had a good one where this guy kind of lines up PPR running backs and their schedules based on what happened last year. I did mine just based on total defense. And so, Aaron or whoever, you guys can find. What's the name of the gentleman?
Scott Barrett.
Scott Barrett. So you can look him up if you're looking for specifically for PPR. But in terms of time, since I just threw out this email or this message this morning. But anyway, so who's got good playoff schedules based on last year? The Bills, will have a great schedule down the stretch. The last kind of 3 weeks of our playoff schedule, Jets are 25th, Detroit 27th, New England 29th. So LaShawn McCoy and the Bills, they have a pretty easy schedule down the stretch. A guy this is the name I'm going to throw at you, Aaron. Alex Collins. I'm a little higher on him than the other guys. We'll talk about Alex Collins later on in the show. But Alex Collins, easy playoff schedule. Kansas City, who's ranked 28th. Tampa, obviously, just dreadful, 32nd. Chargers are 15th. They have a good, pretty solid defense. They could be better this year, but a really good playoff schedule for the Ravens and Alex Collins. How about David Johnson from weeks 8 through 14, minus there's 1 week where they'll take on a team ranked 15th, so that's middle of the pack. But from week 18 to 14th, they're playing against defenses that are 22nd or worse. So think about that. So David Johnson, who's going to be drafted real early, I'm not sure where Aaron's drafting, but if it comes up for him, that might be good, the playoffs down the stretch. Now, here are some bad schedules for running backs at the end of the year. We talked about Kenyon Drake killing it last year, has a really tough schedule. Does have New England, who's ranked 29th, but then Minnesota and Jacksonville, the top 2 defenses in all of the land, so that might be a difficult one to go for. And we already kind of mentioned Green Bay running backs. Weeks 10 through 14, which is 5 weeks, they take on the 11th ranked defense, the number 1, the number 6, the number 9, and number 10. So if you're trying to get to that playoff push, it might be tough to get a Green Bay running back in your lineup, depending on who that is. And hopefully we can clear that up later on in the show. We might not be able to. That's a tough backfield. And how about not the Saints? Now, you're probably going to draft Kamara anyway, and maybe Mark Ingram, but maybe if there's a tiebreaker, 6 of their final 9 weeks are versus top 9 defenses. So that's going to be pretty rough for them as they head towards the playoffs and as we head towards the playoffs as well. So that's something to think about. Alex Collins, Baltimore, usually in the race for the playoffs. Alex Collins, Aaron, that's the guy I'm going to throw at you. Anything else we should want to say about that other than, hey, Aaron, thanks for giving us a question.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
That's a good one.
We want to answer you guys. We want more owners to listen in and pay attention. We want them to beat us. I'm tired of being in the top 5 every year. Mikey's tired of being in the championship every year. Todd has his up years and good years. You were finished 3rd last year, so we want more parity. Mikey doesn't want more parity.
Yeah,
he hates it.
Yeah,
he wants a super team.
He just wants to win it every single year.
He wants Golden State every year.
You want to be Golden State? Let's just rename your team to Golden State. How about that? That work for you?
All right, if you guys will let me have
Just
David
limited.
Johnson, Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott all on my team, I'll be happy.
That would be quite impossible.
You don't want Antonio Brown either? Oh.
Hey, I won't say no.
Oh, God.
All right, let's get into some running backs.
Yeah.
So we'll start things off, kind of how we started the quarterbacks. Who should be number 1? Boy, I thought it would for sure. Mikey didn't vote in our poll, by the way. Thanks, Mikey, one of the folks that should be voting in our poll at the Facebook Messenger. But, so we didn't know who he was going to pick. I knew who you picked. You knew who I picked. We both picked Le'Veon Bell.
Exactly.
Mikey, who did you pick as your number 1 overall running back?
Doesn't it just make it better for the show, though?
Sure, I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all going to be surprised.
It's not that big of a surprise. I picked
It is a surprise.
Ezekiel Elliott.
Oh, my goodness.
Hear me out.
I'm listening.
Hear me
I'm
out.
ready.
Okay.
The stage is yours. The mic is yours.
Okay. So without those receivers that they have in Dallas, no Des Bryant, no Jason Witten, I feel like you're going to see Ezekiel Elliott not only carry the ball a lot more, but carry it more inside the red zone. Okay? I'm looking at him as a upside of 20-plus touchdowns this year, which may sound crazy, but I can see him getting to that number.
Okay.
You know, he almost rushed he was just short of 1,000 yards last year and basically playing 10 games.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why he can't get back to, you know, that 1,600 yards that he was at in his rookie season. And if he puts up 20-plus touchdowns, he could definitely be the number 1 overall back in fantasy.
Even though our league is PPR, he could still be the number 1.
Well, sure. I expect him to pick up a little bit of that load. Now, he's not going to be like Le'Veon Bell where he's catching 75 to 80 catches a year. But, you know, he's ranged 25 to 30. I could see him pick that up a little bit, maybe get into that 40 range because he's going to have to.
I mean, and the thing is he can catch the football. I mean, it's at times, but obviously that's not what he's built for to do. But I mean, obviously that's not as it's not as big a shocker as the Kirk Cousins situation. But and 2, I think Dude, I don't want to agree with Mikey so early in
His
the podcast.
usage is going to be off the charts.
Is the fact he won't have to worry about the legal stuff. Because as much as he said, oh, when I get on the field, that stuff is, that doesn't affect me. Come on, that not knowing each week if you're going to play and you have to go into that mindset wise going into the season, that'll help him knowing, okay, everything's good. I won't have to worry. I won't have to worry about any of that. I can just run the football. So I can understand that one, but I don't know. I mean, it's not crazy to put Ezekiel Elliott number 1, but Le'Veon Bell just does everything. I mean, if he had a better arm, he'd be the quarterback. So,
is there any concern with Le'Veon Bell considering they have a new offensive coordinator going into this year?
I think Le'Veon Bell is just a unique running back where it doesn't matter who the coordinator is. He's just like I think whatever scheme and whatever situation it is, just gonna either hand the ball off to him or throw it to him and just let him. It's kind of just like with Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning doesn't have a set system. It's the Peyton Manning system. You just let him do his thing and he produces. And he's shown that. Le'Veon Bell has shown that. What makes Le'Veon Bell really good is the fact he's such a patient runner. And as Broncos fans, we haven't had a patient runner since Terrell Davis. But Le'Veon is just is such a patient runner and finds the holes. He does everything, and that's what you want definitely in the best fantasy running back in the league. So,
and just so everyone knows, I did have Le'Veon Bell number 2, so I'm splitting hairs here.
Right.
Yeah.
So for the rankings, I have Zeke 4th. Mikey has him 1st. Todd has him 2. Sure. Yeah. I mean, and none of us are even going to have that option to decide as we're all drafting kind of towards a later round. I think just for the fact that, Elliott did catch 38 passes in 10 games, and he had 39 the year before. So there's that opportunity. I think the thing that scares me the most, other than the catches, is that team going to be good enough? Dak was a better quarterback 2 years ago. They won 13 games 2 years ago. Things were working better for them 2 years ago, where they had the scoring opportunities were better. They were more plentiful. Where I think this year, are they going to be a 13-3 team, or are they going to be more 9-7 like they were last year? And without weapons, then who do you even look at outside of putting 9 in the box to stop Zeke? I'm not saying he's not talented enough to still do it, but at least with Le'Veon Bell, they got to cover Antonio Brown too, who's another all-pro type of player. So I think that's what scares. That's why I think I have Bell. I think the PPR thing's obviously. Like, I went back and forth between David Johnson and Zeke because I agree. Zeke is an incredible player. Despite missing six games, he was still one of the leaders in terms of yards per game. Dude's talented.
With the best offensive line in football.
With the best offensive line. But can they stop 10 guys in the box? Because, we joked about this on the last show. Cole Beasley's their number 1 wide receiver. I don't think you need to double-team Beasley. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that is what scares me most about Zeke. I still have him 4th. Just because I like the PPR numbers. I think that's what's going to get me excited more than anything. But,
for me, it's just sheer opportunities. If he's getting over 20 carries a game and he's getting 5 or 6 opportunities as far as targets go, you're talking about 30 touches every game.
But if it's 30 targets but averaging 40 yards a catch and averaging 3.5 yards per carry, sure, the touches will be there, but the touchdowns I think will be less.
See, I disagree. I think he's going to get a lot more.
Because you're talking, if he scores 20 or more touchdowns, they're a winning program, a winning organization. And I don't know if they're a winning organization.
And two,
the defense is terrible.
Yeah, that's that.
Dak was just putrid the second half of the season. And so, he's kind of in that same vein as David Johnson. We don't know what's going to happen with that team. Their defense is probably a little bit better. But, do you go with the winning teams and Gurley and Bell, who are going to get you more opportunities to score? Or is it going to be more, well, he's our only guy, so we're going to give it to him as much as we can? Where does that kind of benefit? Is it the guy that gets more touches or the team that has more touchdown opportunities? Touchdowns are fluky. You don't know. It's hard. Obviously, Julio can tell you all about that, despite being a great player and being on a great offense. But I think that's kind of the difference between David Johnson and Zeke, Gurley and Bell. They're going to have more times where they're going to be in the red zone. than the other guys. But so I mean, yeah, we picking nits, but that's the point of the show.
Yeah.
You know, we're like number one. I just assumed I figured to be Bell or Gurley, not Bell or someone in our league, in our poll. Did I write that down? I'll probably have to look that up. I think I put the poll somewhere. We'll look up the poll results here in a moment and tell you who that is. Most people pick Le'Veon. I think there was one or two that picked Gurley. And then Mikey has Ezekiel Elliott. Okay, let's keep going here as we have a lot to catch up on here with running backs wise. Speaking of Todd Gurley, was 2017 a fluke? Gurley, we mentioned, led all of our running backs in points, 35 more than Le'Veon Bell. 2 years ago, Gurley finished 17th with 885 yards, 6 touchdowns, 43 receptions. Now, obviously, that's a Jeff Fisher year. Sean McVay came in, changed everything up. So are we concerned Gurley is not going to put up those same numbers, who had 19 touchdowns last year? Or do we think he's going to I think 19 is a regressive number. But what do we think about Todd Gurley?
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's a fluke. That year before was completely just Jeff Fisher, nasty, disgusting.
And he was pretty good 2 year. I mean, in his rookie year, in that same office, he still put up some pretty decent numbers.
But he came in late, remember, his rookie year, because he was hurt for part of that year too in his rookie season. So obviously a lot of teams didn't have a lot of tape on him in the beginning, and he, obviously showed that. And obviously 2016, I could, attest to that because I had Todd Gurley on my team, and that was bad. But I agree with Mikey. It's not a fluke. I think it's going to be even more. I think he's going to rush for 1,500 yards and maybe 20 touchdowns this upcoming season, because now Jared Goff is finally, not finally, but figured it out and is, going into his third year now. So I think that definitely helps it. So you don't have to stack the box for Todd Gurley, because I think that's what they obviously did last year, the year before, to stop Todd. And obviously Jared Goff was trying to figure stuff out. So I think 1,500 yards and 20 touchdowns for Todd Gurley this year.
So you're saying he's going to put up pretty much the same numbers as he put last year?
Well, he put up 13.
Well, 13 running. He had 6 receiving. So that's close to 20 touchdowns. So you're saying he's going to get all that rushing?
Yeah, he's going to get that all in rushing, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I think just the
and
way.
And you don't even have him number 1.
I have him.
I can imagine the numbers you're going to put on Le'Veon Bell and Ezekiel Elliott. But we're talking about Todd Gurley, and so you don't think it's a fluke. You feel pretty confident in him.
No,
Mikey.
And the Rams are a good team, so I think he's going to be able to build up a lot of his yards with them playing with the lead. So
Agreed. That is the biggest point you can make, because, their defense is obviously way better. We talked about last time on the show, maybe they don't use him as much because they don't need to score as much, but he's the guy they're going to give the ball to when they're winning games.
Absolutely.
And so whether it's catching the ball or running the ball, man is incredible in space. I think he's going to have another stellar year. Because even in his rookie year, I found his numbers. He had over 1,000 yards rushing, 10 touchdowns, and 21 receptions in 13 games. So Jeff Fisher does not know what he had and didn't use him efficiently. So we all like Todd Gurley. I don't think there's any surprise about that. Let's talk about a new guy, a new running back here that will probably go in the first round, and that's Saquon Barkley. But tell me where you guys think he should be drafted. Not where you think he's going to go, but where do you think he should be drafted in our league draft this year? Mikey, you go first.
First round.
Okay, well, fine. I think most of us are going to say first round, but where in the first round? Where do you have him in your rankings? That's where I'm going for it.
I think I had him 5th or 6th in
I
my
have your
rankings.
numbers right here. You have him 6th. You have him behind Kareem Hunt and ahead of Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, there's no other threat in New York, so he's going to get the bulk of he's a 3-down running back. And he showed, skill in college. He can catch the ball. So I think if I were the Giants, I would try and protect Eli Manning by not trying to, throw the ball all the time. He's older. He's interception prone as it is. So, I think I would use my new toy. So being a 3-down running back with his type of skill, a lot of high-scoring games, in the NFC East. I think he's a first-round pick, but back of the first round. So I'm talking about like 8, 9, 10, somewhere around there.
Todd, what do you think about Barkley?
Second round.
Second round.
And I think the beginning of the second round.
And Todd has him 10th amongst his running back rankings. Go ahead.
So obviously I have him. I have Melvin Gordon, LaShawn McCoy, Kareem Hunt, Alvin Kamara ahead of him, just because obviously kind of proven commodities already a little bit. But, the beginning of the second round, and that's, and to some degree, I'm maybe hoping I draft at 10 and he come around on the other side. That would be, at number and to me in the second round.
Don't count on it, bub.
I know, probably not. But I think just the second round, just because I think, too, you have to look at the mix of the wide receivers that might get drafted in the first round. So I think that might push Saquon down a little bit. But obviously, I know in our league, you never know what you're going to get. I mean, we have picks that are like, oh, that makes sense, or we have like, what the hell, or interesting picks. So I think he just gets pushed back because obviously with the wide receivers, Julio, Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham, DeAndre Hopkins. So I think that's just gonna push Saquon down to the second round, but just the beginning of the second round. So because obviously, Mikey, you said if Saquon gets drafted in the first round, it's going to be toward the end of the first round. So I mean, pretty much the beginning of the second round.
There is no way I'm taking Julio Jones over Saquon Barkley. You're nuts.
Why is that, Mikey?
Julio Jones? The guy that doesn't score touchdowns?
Sure. I mean, I have to ask. I mean, in a PPR league, he still gets 80 catches.
Sure.
1,400 yards.
But based on
he's more proven commodity. I think that's the biggest question out of this is Julio's proven, where Saquon hasn't done anything in the NFL. So why are you taking that risk?
Well, I mean, look at the last 2 years. A rookie running back has led the league in rushing each of the last 2 years. Hunt last year, Ezekiel Elliott the year before.
But they didn't go in the first round, though. They went in the second round. Ezekiel Elliott went in his rookie season.
I told people to take Ezekiel Elliott in the first round that year, if you remember.
And Ezekiel Elliott went in the second round, and Kareem Hunt went in the second round. So, but hey, Mikey, you have 3 championships, so you know what.
But the question is, I don't think anybody is questioning Barkley and his touches. He's going to be the number one guy. We don't know if the Giants are going to be a competitive team. That obviously plays a factor. We talked about that already. But in terms of where does he go amongst those wide receivers? In terms of if it's up to you and you're in, I mean, I'll talk about my situation later where I'm going to be drafting, but the Julios and the A.J. Greens and the Keenan Allens, those guys that are a little more proven than Saquon Barkley. I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't. I'm just throwing that out there that I think some people, and maybe that's just me being safe and conservative, but I'm also a guy that hasn't drafted those guys. I drafted Dalvin Cook. I took a chance. So I'm not one to, I guess there's that difference between a assured wide receiver or Saquon Barkley and his upside, even though we haven't seen anything yet. I think that's what kind of stands out. I think he's going to be good running back, but is he going to produce top first-round numbers? Like, Mikey, give me some numbers that you think would put him – because if you're talking about 8th or 9th, it's got to be over 1,000 yards, 1,200 yards, and maybe 8, 9 touchdowns and 50 catches.
And I don't really look at it on that yearly statistical total. What I'm trying to figure out when I'm drafting is in the first and second round – I take a look at it from week to week. I want a guy that's going to get me, close to 15 points weekly. And I cannot count on that from Julio Jones. Julio Jones, some weeks, you may get 6, some weeks you may get 20, some weeks you may get 10. When I look at somebody like Barkley or these other top running backs, I know there's a floor of anywhere from, 12, 13 points to getting me over 20 every week. And that's why I think that's much safer.
Yeah, but all right, so who are you taking first, Odell or Saquon Barkley?
Saquon Barkley.
All right, so what about Michael Thomas?
Saquon Barkley.
So you're saying the only 2 receivers, and maybe I'm wrong about Hopkins, but Hopkins and Brown, are you taking over Barkley?
I'm definitely taking Brown.
So you're saying you take Barkley
Brown's on another level.
Over Hopkins. Now is this based on Hopkins or Barkley getting more points than Hopkins, or is it based on that you want to have a running back at this point of the draft?
I definitely want to have a running back at that point.
Okay, see, that makes more sense to me as opposed to who you think is going to score more points. Because I think when you get to that point of the draft, some people are going to look at that and say, well, man, Hopkins is a stellar player. Like, he is unless something happens where Brock Osweiler comes back into that lineup from 2 years ago, he should put up, again, incredible numbers. And they'll take Hopkins because he's done it. He's in a very similar situation as last year where Barkley, we have no clue. We have no idea. And if there's a team that scares me, it's the Giants. Sure, they get Nate Solder to kind of help with that offensive line. But if that offensive line is still not good, then what is the ceiling compared to his floor? I don't know. I mean, I'm going to take Hopkins for sure over Barkley. And I would take some running backs. I have Barkley 9th amongst my running backs. So there's other running backs I'm willing to take knowing that they've done it before. And that's just Mr. Safe. That's me. But I don't know if his upside is that where he's going to get Ezekiel Elliott numbers in his first year. I don't think that's not with that team. Not in my opinion.
Unless you knew like the Giants had the Cowboys' offensive line, but they don't. They have maybe one piece that.
At least the Giants have Odell Beckham.
Yeah.
But we're going back to the Zeke conversation. But so that's interesting in itself. Just to kind of talk about. So Saquon Barkley, he's going to go in the first round. If I had to guess in our league where he's going to go, it's not going to be at me at number 8 if he's still available. But, he'll probably go 6 or 7 is my guess. He's going to go before me.
Definitely not before me.
Someone's going to take him early.
I know where my bread is buttered, and it's handed off to that running back.
But really, 6 or...
there are other running backs that will take over Barkley that are going to be available. But so that's interesting. Saquon Barkley. He's just one of those guys. So much has been said about him before now and is going to happen. And it'll be interesting to see what we see in preseason before we draft as well and see how that offensive line really holds up. Okay, so we mentioned how great those rookie running backs were last year. Sophomore slump. Out of these guys, Kareem Hunt, Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette, those were our top scorers amongst rookie running backs. Who out of those guys is most likely to slump here in 2018? Todd, who did you pick out of those guys?
Kareem Hunt. Okay. Just because I think Kansas City has a rookie, second year, technically a rookie quarterback now at the helm. So obviously
You mean like a Ben Simmons rookie?
Hey,
for those that follow me.
There we go. I think they're gonna lean on Kareem Hunt a lot, and I think a little bit of that pressure is maybe gonna get to him a little bit, and because teams are gonna stack the box. So they're like, well, we're not gonna really worry about this rookie quarterback because they're just gonna run the ball. So I think Kareem Hunt out of those four, is gonna have a little bit of slump because he's gonna be dependent on so much, and usually in your second year, usually a lot of teams catch up to you, and then as a running back you have to adjust. So I think Kareem Hunt's going to have to adjust this year. So that's why I think he'll have the sophomore slump.
And the only thing I'll add about it is Spencer Ware is back, and he was pretty productive 2 years ago. Does that change something? I'm sure it'll take some of it. I know Andy Reid said he doesn't mind giving Kareem Hunt more work, but I think Spencer Ware will come in and take away some of his carries. I don't know if it'll be that much, but Spencer Ware is a good player. He ran for 1,000 yards 2 years ago. Mikey's shaking his head no. But are you saying that Hunt is not the guy you would pick that's most likely to slump here in 2018?
No, I definitely wouldn't pick Hunt. And you didn't put Kamara on there either.
Well, I figured we would talk about him at some point or another. But, if you want to put Kamara in there.
Well, he wouldn't be who I would pick. I was just making an observation.
Then quit adding drama to the show.
My pick was Leonard Fournette because he plays for the offensively challenged Jaguars. So opportunities for him are just going to not necessarily be there as far as, scoring touchdowns. And I think he'll get his yards, fair enough. But I just don't – out of those four – I don't think the opportunity is going to be there for him.
He's also injury prone.
Yeah.
He was suspended one game, and I don't know if that's something that we need to keep an eye on in the future. But he's also not a big pass catcher, which if the offense is not going, that's not going to help either. So I don't know. I picked 3 because I didn't know who would be left. So I'll go with my third option, and I picked Christian McCaffrey because for someone – I kind of thought about it. I was like, well, who does he remind me of? Now, he's kind of like a Danny Woodhead in terms of just size. Now, McCaffrey is 5'11", 205, and Woodhead is 5'8" and 205. So he's a little bit bigger. But injuries for guys like that happen quite a bit. They're frequent. And so I think when C.J. Anderson was signed, I think a lot of us were like, oh, man, it's not going to be the Christian McCaffrey show, which I think helps him, actually. He's not going to have to take the full brunt. C.J. Anderson is a bigger body. He can take some of that, but obviously he can't play all 16 games either. So I think McCaffrey will get some starts. He will get beat up a little bit. Obviously, Greg Olsen comes back, hurts him a little bit. And I think the thing that really is going to change for him, I mean, he had over 80 catches, which is incredible. I still think he can get that number. But 5 receiving touchdowns. If there's any touchdown that's more fluky, it's receiving than rushing. And so with those receiving, he could get 1 or 2, and I wouldn't be surprised. So I think that number goes down. So if you're talking about numbers going down, I think McCaffrey has a really good chance of slumping this year. 80 catches, still great, still a good number to have in PPR, but 5 receiving touchdowns is so big, especially with Cam running things in, Greg Olsen back. We'll see how the rest of that wide receiver core kind of shakes up. Maybe it doesn't, but I think 5 is a lot. I mean, he by far led that category in terms of running backs catching passes for touchdowns. So that's who I had. So those are kind of a sophomore slumps there. I'm sorry I didn't bring up Kamara, Mikey.
It's all right.
I don't think anybody's going to say him.
And it won't be Kareem Hunt, Todd. I'm just telling you now. Running backs under Andy Reid don't struggle.
Let's have this I didn't know if I was going to bring this up, but let's talk about it. So the struggle I am having is at my place to number 8. What's going to happen, and I hate that this stuff happens to me, but it happens. I can't decide between Kareem Hunt and Melvin Gordon. Now.
Kareem Hunt.
Yes, I know, Mikey. Just give me a second, okay? Based on where we have them ranked in our rankings, I actually have Gordon over Hunt at the current time. So Mikey has Kareem Hunt 5th and Melvin Gordon 10th. Todd, very similar. So he has Kareem Hunt 7th and Melvin Gordon 9th. So both you guys like Gordon less than Kareem Hunt. So like Kareem Hunt better. Now, here's my thought process and why I like Gordon better than Hunt. Gordon's done it a few more years. Obviously, Kareem Hunt's in his first year. I agree. Andy Reid loves using running backs, although there was those 5 weeks where he wasn't calling the plays and he disappeared. But despite that, the thing that stands out to me amongst this conversation is that Patrick Mahomes, as you mentioned, is an unknown quantity. Phillip Rivers is a known quantity. Hunter Henry is gone. Travis Kelce is there. So I think the catches could be even better. Now, the one number that doesn't favor Melvin Gordon is yards per carry. It's under 4, where Kareem Hunt, I think, was mid-4s. I'll have to find that number. I have it somewhere. So with a better quarterback, with a better offense, with more targets coming his way, shouldn't Melvin Gordon be the guy over Kareem Hunt? What am I missing?
For me, Melvin Gordon, even though he did put up those incredible numbers, a lot of that was in the first half of the year. With his running style, he tends to get beat up a little bit. You know, it seemed like the whole second half of the season, it was always something nagging him. Okay. You know, he runs into people. He doesn't run around them.
Sure.
So injuries for me is a concern with Melvin Gordon. Now, what I did like about him is they did use him in the red zone a lot. So that's a benefit. But with Kareem Hunt, you're Mr. Safety.
Sure.
And Andy Reid and top 10 running backs in fantasy, they just go hand in hand. You know, no matter who it is. You know, Jamal Charles, if it's Brian Westbrook, Kareem Hunt last year. You know, even back in the days, I mean, he was doing stuff with Dorsey Levens in Philadelphia, Terrell Buckhalter in Philadelphia. Just Andy Reid loves using his running backs. So, to me, Kareem Hunt is that more safe option if I'm drafting in the first round than Melvin Gordon.
I think it's interesting and this goes, I think, for all rookie running backs. We're so enamored. Like, you know, they have these rookie running backs that, you know, come in the league and, you know, for the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season, they're just wowing. Like, you're just like, wow, this is going to be like a top 10, you know, running back next year in fantasy. Like, he's just doing great. And then the next year, we talked about it previously, you know, the sophomore slumps. And then you're like, oh, what happened? So I think with Melvin Gordon, why I think I would go with Melvin Gordon is in your case would be.
But you have Kareem
I have
Hunt.
Kareem Hunt higher, but I also did say he would have a sophomore slump because obviously he does have the ability to do what he did in his rookie season. But I think with Melvin Gordon would be in your case would be the fact he struggled and then figured it out. So I think sometimes with running backs when they go through that, I think that helps them going forward in their careers. When they had a season where you're just like, wow, this guy can't figure it out, and then the next season, like, whoa, it's completely different, completely new running back. So, and even though it's the same one, so in your case, because I think Hunt's probably gonna go before you.
I don't know. I think they're just based on where obviously my mock draft is going to be different than anyone else's, but based on where I have them, that's going to be where I'm at, is between those two guys. And so for me, if you're going to ask me who's going to score more points this year, San Diego or Kansas City, it's going to be San Diego.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't I take Melvin Gordon?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If they're both very similar. Now, the only thing that just popped in my head now is the ceiling higher for Kareem Hunt, where Gordon, who's been in the league a few more years, we know what we're getting out of him. It was what we saw last year, just the steps, just the beginning of what was going to happen. Are we expecting Kareem Hunt to have better numbers this year, or are they going to regress?
They may regress a little bit because if he has a sophomore slump, that's the thing. With Melvin Gordon, at least you know coming into the season, all right, I know what I'm getting. Like you always say, going sometimes with the safe picks that are the proven backs. But I'm not saying Kareem Hunt's not a scrub by any means. I mean, he could still do what he did in his rookie season, but that was kind of toward the first half of the season too. He kind of took a little bit of a dive in the second half a little bit, but that was...
And Kareem Hunt did the same thing. Kareem Hunt had 4 100-yard games in the first 5 games, just 2 the rest of the way.
Yeah. But
you would figure, though, that with the, rookie quarterback, coming in, that they would rely more on the run game than just having Patrick Mahomes go out there and just start airing it out.
Agreed.
But they're going to stack the box then.
But if they're not moving the chains because he's not that good, I don't know. That's the problem. I think that's why I think preseason is going to be big for me. If he's showing he's capable, then maybe. But, I mean, it's a fine line between one or the other. But it just seems like wherever I go, everybody's like, Kareem Hunt for sure is better than Melvin Gordon. And I don't know if that's the case.
Yes.
But thanks, Mikey. I'll take that in consideration when I'm drafting on draft day. Okay, let's keep moving. And I asked you guys this question, and if you have a guy, cool. If not, but when you were typing up your rankings, was there someone that kind of surprised you? You were like, wow, he's better than I thought, or he's got a better situation ahead of him than I thought, or was there a guy that kind of shot up your rankings, or you were surprised you had you ended up putting up higher in your rankings? Was anybody that stood out to you?
For me, it was Marlon Mack, which I'm sure I've got a little bit higher than you guys. Again, opportunity, and if Andrew Luck is back, I think that's going to help open up their run game. So, I felt like he was a guy that not a lot of people are talking about that I think is going to get a lot of opportunity this season.
Yes, Marlon Mack, just real quick. I had him 33rd, Mikey 23rd, Todd 44th. So, Todd, not a fan of Marlon Mack.
Not a fan of that cold offense until Andrew Luck is 100%, 100% healthy, and then he can do everything. Because if not, that offense is just straight garbage. Because teams know, again, I keep saying this, but it's true, is the fact when teams look at the situation, go, well, yeah, their quarterback's not very good, so they're going to lean on this. They're going to lean on their running back, so we're just going to keep stacking the box. So, and that goes for for the Colts as well too. So if Andrew Luck is in play and 100% ready to go, I'd move Marlon Mack up. But as right now, until we see Andrew Luck really throw a regular sized football and not a Nerf ball, then I'll move him up.
All right, so give me the initial question.
Yeah.
Was there a guy that kind of jumped up in your rankings once you started putting some research in?
Actually, Joe Mixon, and obviously last year I just obviously just with his off-field stuff, but knowing now no more Jeremy Hill, it's just him and Bernard now. So I think I think this might be this year he'll surprise a lot of people. He didn't do a whole lot during his rookie season, but I think this year he's gonna surprise some people. I think he'll go rushing. I think at least 800 to 900 yards rushing, maybe about 30 to 40 catches, rushing touchdowns. I'd say about at least 3 or 4, and then
That's terrible.
well, it's not terrible, but catching. I think he'll at least get 7 or 8 passing touchdowns. Catching the ball. There we go.
So Joe Mixon. So
Yep.
if I showed you the video again, would you hate him even more? Because you were like distraught over that.
I
video.
was, and hey, at the time, for what he really did, I mean, I know it was horrible, but I mean, he's, the sports in general loves giving players second chances. So if he really cleans up his act and the backfield isn't as crowded like you said, Mikey, last year, then I think that'll give him more opportunity to go. But
It's that 3.5 yards per carry that worries me with him.
Not to mention they have one of the worst offensive lines.
that just means more catches then.
If Andy Dalton's standing at the end of the day. But, a guy that I thought that I was surprised I put up in my rankings, and just for Joe Mixon, I had him 17th. Todd had him 17th, I think. And Mikey had him 21st. A guy that actually jumped up, I actually am still the lowest amongst you guys in terms of like rankings, but I thought Jay Ajayi was a guy that I just didn't even think about drafting at all. It's like, Jay Ajayi, gross. What do I want to do with him? But when he got there with the Eagles in a winning situation, from week 14 on to the NFC title game, he had 14-plus carries and was very productive. Even though Corey Clement was there, very good scat back. But in terms of just being first down, second down, getting the goal line, LeGarrette Blount is gone, right? Yep. And so he's going to get all the goal line carries, and they're not going to give it to Carson Wentz because we saw what happened when he did.
Yep.
I'm not saying that he's going to be totally gone, but I think they're going to give more opportunities to Jay Ajayi. The biggest thing with Ajayi is his fumbling. He's got 7 fumbles in the last 2 years. But I think the opportunity in a winning situation, especially if they're not happy with what the backup quarterback over there, and I think the backup quarterback's going to be fine. But I think Jay Ajayi is a guy that I was surprised actually ended up in my top 31 at the end of the day. So those are guys we were just thinking that surprised us when we did our rankings. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk about rookies. Not a ton. We've talked some rookies on this show, especially in the draft. But, Mikey, give me a guy that you are kind of high on in rookies, or a guy that maybe you're targeting, or maybe someone that kind of jumps out at you. Give me a rookie that you want to talk about on the show.
Ronald Jones.
Okay,
Tampa
that's the
Bay.
Tampa Bay guy, right?
Yeah. I think he's got a really good opportunity to be the number 1 back over there. Now with Winston out, they're going to need him. That's been a situation for years. They just have not been able to figure out. I mean, Doug Martin's hot, then he's cold, then he's hot again, then he's cold. They need some stability, and I think he really has a chance to bring that to him. Was a really good running back in college that could catch the ball too, which I think is going to be really important for Tampa.
Any worries about the rest of the guys? I mean, they have a lot of guys. Sims, Barber. I think they still have Jacquizz Rodgers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are you worried about those guys? I mean, that's a lot of guys.
Yeah, but if they had those guys last year. They were looking to draft a running back because they want to have one, not have 4 below average guys. They're looking to have this bell cow come in and do something for them. At least that's my belief.
Todd, what about a rookie that you like?
Rashard Penny from Seattle.
Okay.
Obviously, he's probably going to be, if he wows in preseason and does great, I think he'll be the number 1 guy. There's not anybody else there that I'm really worried about taking carries away.
Chris Carson, you're not afraid of Chris Carson?
I'm afraid of Russell Wilson taking those carries away.
Yeah, well, if Russell Wilson wants to stay upright and win games, I think he'll hand the ball off. So I like Rashard Penny because he's kind of one of those all-purpose backs, run, catch the ball. Especially up in Seattle, that especially going to like now like a winning franchise now, that does help. Well, still they're still consistent enough, but that Pete Carroll does a good job of getting everything he can out of his players, and I think that'll help him because obviously we were a little surprised, when Seattle drafted him that high. I mean, I don't think he was one of the first round running backs, going into the draft. So I think if anything, he'll may not start right away or something. Maybe Chris Carson. Maybe if Pete Carroll's like, well, let's try this for a little bit, and then we'll.
No, I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, okay.
I think he's had enough of garbage running backs to say, well, let's try Chris. No, they drafted
him
and
to
got him to make sure.
That
like
they
he was a guy we are like, who? What? They drafted what? I mean, obviously we're not like experts, but we know who the top running backs are going to be drafted.
Yeah.
He wasn't even on the list, but they liked him enough
to draft
him way ahead. Well, maybe they could have waited around to do it. Like, no, we're getting him now because that's how much they like him. So I think, he's going to start from day one. I'd be surprised unless something happens fumble-wise, injury-wise. But if everything lines up, Penny's got to be the guy.
I agree. That terrible offensive line worries me, though.
Yeah, and they added some parts, but I don't still think manageable. I don't know. But
does he go high, though? Does he go like second or
you talking about in our draft?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's someone, if they're enamored enough, maybe third round. I mean, he's going to be a starting running back with really not a lot of options, so maybe at the end of the third round, early fourth round.
I could see the fourth round. I could see the fourth round, the beginning of the fourth round.
I can't do third round. I'm sorry. Thomas Rawls, anyone?
Sure. But, I mean, you're talking about Leonard Fournette went in the third round, and he was a rookie running back. If you talk about early fourth round, Carlos Hyde, Kareem Hunt. And after that is garbage. I mean, Adrian Peterson, Marshawn Lynch, Isaiah Crowell. If someone likes him enough, and I think someone will, he could go in the third round, fourth round. It could happen. The only guy, I had Penny, but I like Geis too. They don't want Alex Smith to throw 50 times a game.
Ooh.
And they don't, P. Ryan is nothing. Chris Thompson may not even be ready by week one after his ACL injury a year ago. Going to get a ton of work. He didn't catch a lot of balls at LSU, but LSU doesn't have their running backs catch passes.
No.
And he caught something like 800 yards in his senior year. So I think that's a guy while Penny in the right situation would be nice to have, Geis would also be a guy I would really be excited to have. But we've talked a lot about running backs. I feel like I'm just repeating myself in that rookie. Okay, so let's talk about some backfield depth charts. We'll see how much we get through. I don't know if I'll get through all this. We're going to skip Oakland. We've talked about Oakland on the show, right? We've talked about Marshawn Lynch, Doug Martin, Jalen Richard. We're going to skip that one. But let's talk about New England's backfield.
Yay.
So what we're going to have these guys do is rank them. And amongst the guys that I have, and I don't know if you guys have a fourth New England running back, because they probably do have more than three. But between Rex Burkhead, James White, Sony Michel, which order, in your opinion, how would you rank those, Mikey?
I'm going to take Burkhead first, Michel second, and James White third.
Okay. Why Burkhead over Michel?
Because I believe that Burkhead is going to be the day one starter. I just can't see Bill Belichick starting a rookie day one. Especially, what happens, with these rookies. They're not always, up to speed when it comes to, pass protection. And that first things first, he's going to protect Brady. Burkhead's already got a year in that system. So I think eventually Michel will be the better guy down the line, maybe towards the end of the year. But Burkhead is going to be the day one starter now.
Isn't it also fair to say that the Patriots usually don't draft skill players early?
That's true.
So, that's also something else where it's maybe they bring him in early. I agree with what you say, though, that you got to protect Brady. But, man, I don't know. That's pretty high first-round pick not to utilize him right out of the gate. Sony Michel, in my opinion. And Burkhead's kind of injury-prone. But, if you're talking about day one, I could see Burkhead starting day one. But if you're talking about fantasy points at the end of the season,
it just depends on.
Are you saying Burkhead's going to have more than Michel at the end of the year?
It just depends on when you get in there. You saw Burkhead; he started, picking up more points towards the end of the year too.
Correct.
So they're more comfortable. They got to a point where they started to feel more comfortable using him. So I think it's going to be close. But if I had to break it one way, I'm going to give it to Burkhead for now.
Okay, Todd, how do you have it ranked?
I have Michel, James White, and Rex Burkhead.
Todd loves him some James White.
PPR machine. He's the one. He's the one running back where Brady feels comfortable, throwing to him, whether it's on third down or even in the red zone sometimes. Obviously with because I think too it's going to help James White too, because the fact Edelman's going to be out for a couple games. So who else are they gonna throw to in the red zone? So I think James White for sure. Still that the passing down running back. And Sony Michel, I think I agree with you, Eric. The fact that drafted in this high, and you're gonna wait a little bit. I know, I hate to say this, but as much as Bill Belichick is a giant douche, he definitely knows what he's doing. So sometimes you don't question like, okay, well, they drafted this running back really high, but we're gonna leave him on the bench until week 10, until you see him. But I think eventually Sony Michel will probably be the main starter, and then James White will be the passing down running back.
Just James White, you don't get any running ability at all.
He had 43 attempts in 14 games. So yeah, once in a while. But I mean,
catches.
he had 170. 56 catches.
Yeah, and that's all you're getting. That's it. So
Yeah.
unless he's scoring touchdowns, I can't put James White that high. I can't.
It just depends. I mean, you never know what you're going to get from those running backs, but when they do feed James White the ball, whether it is running or catching, he produces.
Let me ask this question.
Okay.
Is it better to get the number one points? So if you assume that Burkhead is the number one guy, is it better to get him early, or is it better to get the value of the next guy? So if it's between Burkhead and Michel, and most people are picking Burkhead first, is it better to draft Michel later on value principle, thinking that there's a better chance, or not a better chance, but there's a chance he could outperform Burkhead, and he's probably going 3 or 4 rounds later?
Sure, that is absolutely a chance.
Okay, so that's something to think about. You don't necessarily need to get the top guy, but maybe the value guy ends up paying off bigger for you down the road. Let's keep going. How about Cleveland? All right, you have Carlos Hyde, Nick Chubb, Duke Johnson, and those are the top 3 guys we're going to talk about. So, Todd, we'll let you go first this time. How do you have those 3 ranked?
So I have Duke Johnson first, and then I have
This is why
Nick
you
Chubb.
take notes. So it's right in line. You have to look in your damn rankings.
I was looking at my rankings.
Exactly. Write it down for next time.
It's all right. My bad. So I'd still go Duke Johnson, just because he's the more he catches more passes than you don't know what you're gonna get from Nick Chubb. Carlos Hyde really hasn't ever been that,
Top 10 actually was last year.
1 year, Mikey. Let's calm down on the first year. So
you say Johnson,
Yeah.
then Hyde or Chubb. Who's second on that list?
I'd go Nick Chubb and then Hyde.
Okay, Mikey, what do you think about that?
I think it's so similar to the New England situation. It's disgusting. It's basically the same thing. So, Duke Johnson's in that James White role because he's not going to run the ball. So it just kind of comes down to how they decide to use it. I think they're going to do the same thing. Carlos Hyde's going to be the starter at the beginning. And then if Nick Chubb is good enough, he's probably more valuable at the end of the season.
So out of those 3, who has the most fantasy points? Because that's what our owners want to know. Who's going to have the more points?
God, it's Cleveland. Ugh. I'm going to say Carlos Hyde.
People are picking them to go to the playoffs, Mikey.
Yeah, they're stupid people.
I had Hyde first. I had him 26 overall. I had Duke Johnson 27. He's a guy that even if Hyde or Chubb is doing well, he's catching passes, he's scoring touchdowns. I like Duke Johnson a lot. But I think Hyde ends up having the most points. I don't know anything, if Chubb's going to come in. But Hyde is a really good player. He had 240 attempts last year, 8 touchdowns, 59 receptions. I think for a coach whose job, I don't know how much of it's on the hot seat. If you're asking me whom I'm going to put in, and my job's close on the line, I'm going to put in Carlos Hyde for someone who finished with incredible numbers last year. So that's who I would go with. Okay, let's keep it going because we are definitely over an hour already. The Jets. So do we want to talk about the Jets?
I hate all those guys.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll just keep going. How about the Titans? That is quite the scenario between Derrick Henry or Deion Lewis. Mikey, how are you drafting them?
This is gonna sound weird because I hated Derrick Henry so much last year.
It's brutal.
I did,
brutal.
but I actually like him this year.
Did he send you a gift basket? He got you some muffins? Like, what
no,
happened in the offseason?
I just don't count on Deion Lewis to
Is that
be.
playoff game just looming in your memory right now? You just love seeing him just battle through and run for touchdowns?
Well, that was very impressive. Very impressive playoff game.
Yes.
But it's more so that I think he's going to get the lion's share of the carries here. Deion Lewis had a really good stretch towards the end of the year last year, but I don't know that Tennessee's going to be able to utilize him in the same way that the Patriots did. I just think that Derrick Henry, I like what I saw in that playoff game. I think his touchdowns are going to be a lot higher this year, so I like that. And I just don't think Deion Lewis is going to be the same out of that New England system.
Okay, Todd, who do you like more? Who are you drafting first?
I don't like either one of them, but if I had to,
Wow, you don't like either one of them?
I don't like either
you
one.
have them in your
No.
top 22, if I'm not mistaken.
I have Henry 23rd.
So you got to like them a little bit to have them in your
And
top
Deion
20.
Lewis 23. Just the system, but if I was going to draft one of them,
They like to run in that system.
I understand they like to run.
They like to
the si-
run first, then pass second.
Yeah, but it's still a crappy team, though.
They're a playoff team that won a playoff game last year.
I know.
They
but
may not be offensively gifted as some of the other teams, but they're winning games. They're putting stats on the board.
Yeah, but I'm just not a big fan. I'm just not a big fan of either. I mean, obviously, if Deion Lewis was still in New England, I'd have him higher. But if I had to, obviously for the show, I'll go Deion Lewis first, since he catches a lot of passes, and then Derrick Henry.
So you have Deion Lewis ranked 36th here,
Yeah,
and Derrick Henry 23rd. But you would draft Deion Lewis first.
I would draft Deion Lewis first, just depending how the
Todd doesn't even go by his own rankings.
I know. I'm just all over the
You're
place.
all over the place.
No,
I
wait.
think, in my honest opinion, it's going to be split. And so depending on what kind of stats you guys think he's going to put out there, I think it's going to be split. All right, last one. I don't know if we're going to get to the discrepancies. We are well over an hour already. Green Bay, obviously talked about Aaron Jones being suspended for the first 2 games. But between Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, and Ty Montgomery, how do you have them ranked, Todd?
Ty Montgomery, number 1. Aaron Jones, number 2. And Jamal Williams, number 3.
Wow, you're still on the Ty Montgomery train.
Sure am.
A whole year after he screwed you last year.
He like those first couple games.
You
before,
drafted Ty Montgomery in the 2nd round?
3rd round.
3rd round, and you're still on the Ty Montgomery train.
I'm still on the.
I just got to point out because Todd said he would have Ty Montgomery first, Jamal Williams second, Aaron Jones third. It's the exact opposite on his list.
Oh, really? So I told these guys to give me rankings of 1 to 50, and Todd is having a hard time keeping up with his rankings. It's understandable. While he's figuring that out, Mikey, what do you think?
Well, I agree. It's Ty Montgomery. As you see, I had him ranked 18th in my list. So I'm actually high on him. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a. I barely have Montgomery even ranked, I think.
You didn't even have
So
him ranked, which I was a
think
little
it
surprised.
sounds like they're going to use him as some sort of running back, wide receiver hybrid,
right.
which means he's not even going to be the starting running back.
You don't think that they're going to put him on the field out of those 3 guys? They're going to put whoever Aaron Rodgers trusts.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And maybe he doesn't trust any of them.
No, I think he does
I don't
trust
know.
Ty Montgomery. Todd is right. Before he got hurt, in the beginning of the season, that guy was a target monster. In those first couple games. This guy was getting over 10 targets a game through the passing game.
But there's something to being able to stay healthy.
There is. I agree
And then
with you
even when
there.
he came back, he wasn't productive.
But if
It was all Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, even when he was healthy until they got hurt.
But they were weaning him back too.
Weaning him back. He's an NFL player.
Okay.
If he's ready to come back, they're going to utilize him.
I have to bring up a very important fact, okay?
I'm listening to your
Ty
facts.
Montgomery does not work when you have crap quarterbacks like Brett Hundley in the game, okay?
No, if you're a good
He's
player,
tied.
you're a good player.
No.
So then
tied.
Kareem Hunt, I'm putting way down the list. 'cause I don't know anything about
Somebody
Patrick
like
Mahomes.
Montgomery that's a better receiver than running back is going to be 100 times better with Rodgers in the game as opposed to being handed off to Brett Hundley. He's useless without Aaron Rodgers, okay? But if Aaron Rodgers is healthy and is in there, Ty Montgomery is a steal.
I don't even think Green Bay knows what they're doing with Ty Montgomery. So if we're drafting today, there's no way I'm drafting Ty Montgomery before those two.
That's okay.
I mean, Aaron Jones averaged almost 6 yards per carry when he was on the field. He had six carries of 20 or more yards. The dude is an incredible player.
Is that with or without cocaine?
I don't know if it was cocaine.
Don't.
Mikey, I don't know. But if we're talking about drafting guys at this point of the season, he seems like he's got the most upside if we're talking about running backs.
See, I think that suspension's going to put him back.
Maybe.
I really do.
I mean,
a young player
you in the
like
doghouse.
that. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's just keep going. So those were the backfields that we have. You guys can judge those on your own. What do we want to talk about discrepancies? I mean, you guys have the list in front of you, right? Mm-hmm. Is there one that jumps out? We have a ton where we were all just way different on. We talked about Melvin Gordon, Kareem Hunt. We talked about that. Let's talk about the Broncos backfield because Aaron kind of asked about that too. Which Broncos guy is the one to own? That's Aaron's question. Which one needs to be owned? Which one's going to be the better fantasy running back?
I want to say
no one wants to say anything.
I want to say that it's going to be Freeman.
Okay.
Because, I mean, we've all seen Devontae Booker, and, I mean, really, it's just he looks slow. He doesn't break tackles. He's okay catching the ball, but it's nothing impressive. And I had them ranked up 15th. You know,
right. You had them like next to each other.
Not knowing who's going to win the job, but more projecting towards Freeman winning the job because when I look at Bill Musgrave and how he likes to run teams, I don't think it's going to be timeshare. I think whenever they decide to pick in the preseason who's going to be the guy, it's going to be the guy, and that guy is going to be the bell cow. And I think if it's Freeman, good. You know, Musgrave likes to run the ball. So I think he's going to get a lot of opportunity to run the ball here, and I think numbers can really show out of that.
So if we're drafting today, who are you drafting?
If they come out and say Royce Freeman is the number one back.
We don't know. We're drafting Mikey. We're on the clock.
You can't put me in that position.
Aaron wants to know, and we're going to tell him.
You're asking me to trust whether or not Vance Joseph and his boner for Devontae Booker.
Then Booker's the answer then, right?
Oh, I hope not.
If you think that's where they're going to go, that they're going to give Booker every opportunity, even if that includes 10 to 12, 13 games as a starting running back, that's the guy you have to have, right? No, see, this is why I have Royce Freeman as number 40, because none of us like those, either one. So, I mean, that whole situation's a tough situation. But if we're drafting today, you're saying it's got to be Booker because he's going to have more fantasy points at the end of the year.
No, I can't do that. I can't do that.
All right, well, then you can explain to Aaron. Todd, do you have anything to say about anything new or anything? I mean, we know this team more than anybody.
I mean,
obviously, being Bronco fans.
It's gonna come down to the offensive line. The offensive line works, then I think they'll go with Freeman. Booker obviously not to his fault of his own. He was running behind some bad offensive lines.
Ugh, excuses. No, he's terrible.
I know he's terrible. Well, I have him 43 and I have Freeman 37. So it's not like I have Booker, number 5 by any means. But I think ultimately it's probably going to be Freeman.
Okay.
I would draft Freeman if we were drafting today. Freeman.
I agree. Draft Freeman. Leave that Booker at home. He's not gonna help anybody. Another one that stands out that we're all really different on was Tevin Coleman. Mikey has him 41st. I have him 30th. Todd has him 20th. Todd, why do you like Tevin Coleman as your top 20 running back? What is it about Tevin Coleman?
I just think I like the offense that he's in. Sometimes when I was ranking some of these running backs, I was looking obviously at their offenses that they're in. They have an MVP type quarterback, so they don't have to worry about focusing on him. And obviously, I know I said in previous podcasts that I would take Freeman over Tevin Coleman, but Coleman still produces. In that even if it's split, and there are times where obviously Coleman does get some of the goal line carries as well. He can catch the football as well too. So that's why I have him in my top 20.
Man, at 20, you have to be projecting he gets to double-digit touchdowns, or Freeman's getting hurt. Something that is high.
I think too they're going to be, because obviously Freeman was hurt too in the
For
season.
2 games.
Two
last year.
games, but I think they want. I think too the carries are going to be split a little bit too between them, and they're going to try to balance it out so they don't have the fear of either one of them getting injured. So, I think Coleman is worth it at where I have him ranked at number 20.
Well, and I explained in the last podcast that if you look at the history, Coleman gets worse the more he gets. So I don't buy into that whatsoever.
But if they split it though, if they do a good job of
If they split, he's not a top 20 running back. Because there's other running backs that are going to get way more opportunities, more carries, more touches than Tevin Coleman at number 20.
But I think the Falcons. But I think even if they split it, Coleman will get those will get those goal line carries and those goal line touchdowns. And
they can pass the ball too, right?
I understand that they can do.
So you're expecting them to score 50 points a game.
They would have to have something similar to what New Orleans did last year.
Yeah.
So
Which
you're saying
tough.
Tevin Coleman's going to have to be like Kamara to Freeman's Ingram. I just don't see they're the same type of players.
It could be anything can happen, Mikey.
I'm in the middle. I think they're both really good players, but if you're talking Coleman and Devonta Freeman, they seem like it's getting more split as the years go along. Obviously, there's a lot of concussion things going on with Freeman. I think Coleman is not even going to be a Falcon in a couple of years. They'll give him to someone else who wants to. He'll get starting running back money to be a starting running back somewhere else. But so I'm in the middle. He's a good player, but I'm not going to put him in my top 20 because I think there's opportunities for other people to do greater things. Anybody else? I mean, we're kind of coming up the last few minutes of the show.
I'd like you to talk about Alex Collins.
Well, I mean, we kind of talked about this before, but I mean, So Collins, I have 16th. Mikey has him 30th. Tom has him 33rd. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of Kenneth Dixon, and I don't know why you're a big Kenneth Dixon fan. I mean, you have him in your top 50. I don't have him anywhere near because he can't stay healthy on the field. But in terms of what he was able to, he finished 17th in points last year, 6 touchdowns, close to 1,000 yards. What's going to stop him from doing it next year or this year as well? To be a guy that's going to get all the carries. I think he can improve a little bit. He's not going to be a big pass catch guy. He's not that type of guy. But if he's getting 25 to 30, that's productive.
Yeah, I don't think he's a 3-down back, which kind of.
Who's going to be the 3rd down back? Buck Allen?
They can either use Dixon or.
No, I have Buck Allen ranked, and you guys don't. But I don't think he's going to come in, and he comes in if he's hurt and he's not healthy, and maybe to give him a breather every 3 downs. But Alex Collins is a young guy. He's a big guy. He can handle 3-down work. And, I mean, I don't know how many touchdowns he's going to score. I'm not a big Baltimore fan. But obviously with that crappy wide receiving core, he's going to get opportunities even at the goal line. The defense is still solid enough where they can get them turnovers. They were a very good turnover team defense last year. And just put him in the 5 or 10-yard line. He's got the ability to get in the end zone. We're talking about opportunity. He's going to get the goal line carries. He's not going to get a lot of catches. But in terms of guys, I mean, I have like Kenyon Drake around him, Joe Mixon, guys that are kind of similar. I mean, are they going to blow you away? Maybe Penny if you like him, but he's a rookie.
I just think I'm down on Baltimore as a whole.
Sure.
I don't like anything about them.
But, I mean, last year he finished 17th on that same crappy team. Why can't he finish 17th again?
Oh, he could.
I have him 16th, but, I mean, if you're asking me comparing him to Joe Mixon, Collins has an offensive line to run behind. A defense that'll give him opportunities inside the red zone or at least more opportunities off turnovers where Joe Mixon, he's got that ability to break tackles, McCanny, and Giovanni Bernardi's still there too. He has no one to fight with unless Buck Allen comes in and they give him more. But I don't think they will.
Yeah, I worry about Baltimore being a bad or worse team and maybe having to throw the ball more, which is scary.
That's scary stuff, yeah. And he doesn't catch the ball. So I think they're going to run the ball. They'll play defense, run the ball. That's what Baltimore is kind of built on. Jamal Lewis was the man they relied upon, and he ran for 2,000 yards because they wanted to run the ball and let the defense do its thing. I agree. Take the ball out of Flacco's hand. Get it out of his hand. So for someone, I'm not saying he's going to finish top 10. He's not going to have 10 touchdowns or 10 or 12 touchdowns, but he could get 6 to 8 just for the opportunity. Terrell Suggs will get a pick and bat something in the air, and then he'll get an easy steal touchdown. I don't think that's too much to ask from Alex Collins.
No.
Not to mention he has an incredibly easy schedule at the end of the year, as we mentioned earlier in the show. So there you go. What else? What else can we talk about? Anything else? Todd hates Kenyon Drake.
Yeah,
Mikey and I have him in their top 18.
still Miami.
He's still got to run the ball.
Right. And so are you thinking Frank Gore's coming in there and stealing all his carries?
Kenyon Drake was the best running back the last 5 weeks of the season last year.
Still
The best. And he has pretty much the same team, other than if you count Jay Cutler. But I think Tannehill's an upgrade over Cutler.
but both
Saying
Cutler
it's
and Tannehill.
still Miami, that's not analysis.
But it's well. Here's the thing. Who else are they going to? First of all, who else are they going to throw the ball to? They got rid of their probably best weapon in wide receiver in Jarvis Landry. So teams are just going to stack the box. You have to look at the situations of the entire team around teams around these running backs. If the teams have obviously really good wide receivers, I mean not elite, but decent ones where the defense is going to have to focus on them too as well, and then that'll just help the running game. But when you have nothing else,
I don't say they have nothing else. I mean, Kenny Stills and Devontae Parker aren't sexy. And they also, was it Albert Wilson they got too? They're not number ones.
Yeah,
But, I mean, Kenny Stills is a speedster that's going to go over the top. And Tannehill has a rapport with him.
And he had 32 catches in limited action last year.
I agree, but I think too I got to just see a little bit more from I mean, because it's different when you're getting toward the end of the season. When some of these running backs, just.
But that's when rookies or young guys figure things out is through the season. And he wasn't even utilized. It was Jay Ajayi until they traded him.
Yeah,
they didn't really give him carries until the end of the year.
Well, they were splitting two with that Damian Williams too.
Right, and he's gone.
Well, then at least that obviously
Bring
shows.
in Frank Gore and his 2 yards to carry. All right.
Hey, some goal line carries.
So Todd doesn't like Kenyon Drake. That's fine. We'll draft him and then we'll win a championship. Well, Mikey might. I don't know if I will. So I think that's where we'll end it. A lot of running back talk. I think we're like an hour and a half, maybe a little bit more than that. But I mean, it's running backs, right? That's a very important position in fantasy football. Obviously, between them and wide receivers, they're the bulk of the first round and even the second round. So I think it's good that we touched on a lot of this stuff. We didn't touch everybody. And if you're Jameis Winston, you shouldn't be touching anybody at all. But it was fun to talk about. Things are going to happen. Injuries are going to occur as we get closer and preseason games start happening. So it'll be exciting to see how that comes about. We'll talk about some wide receivers and probably tight ends in that same situation. A lot of wide receivers, but we got to talk about tight ends at some point. It's a fantasy position, so we'll just tack it on at the end of the wide receiver episode. So exciting. We didn't answer the Bronco question, but that's all right. We got to pretty much everything else. Anything else you guys want to add before we get out of here? And it's July 4th. Football not too far away.
No, training camp opens up in a few weeks.
Yep. Todd said he wants to go to training camp so he can watch his boy Royce Freeman up close and personal. All right.
Just want to say you're my firework.
Oh, wow. That's so sweet. Makes my heart just pitter-patter, pitter-patter, pitter-patter. So, stay away from those Uber drivers, and we'll see you next time on the MHA Podcast. MHA Podcast. MHA Podcast.
MHA Podcast.